Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship. And in this video, I'm going to talk about making money. Okay, and I know there are a lot of you who are trying to figure out how do I make money. And I'm just going to go over something so basic yet ignored by most of the population because there's a lot of emotion attached to what I'm going to say. Right now, before we get into it, let's just go over basic definitions of English. Okay, basic English. What is the definition of a poor person? Oh, a person who doesn't have money. Okay. And what is the definition of a rich person? Oh, it's a person who has lots of money. So if you are poor and your goal is to make more money, are you going to get it by from the people who don't have money, aka poor people, or are you going to get it from people who have lots and lots of money, aka the rich people? Right? Like, I know it's so obvious, but people are like, they want to fight against this because they somehow think, and I don't know if this is some sort of weird Robin Hood fantasy, that there's some way to make money off of people who don't have it. Again, we're not talking about whether it's right or wrong if certain groups of people have money or not. Okay, we're not talking about that. I'm just saying if your goal is to make money, right? And you are poor right now, you have to sell stuff to the people who have money, aka the rich people. The rich people, right? And I'm gonna tell you, if you go dive, I'm sorry, I can't even speak right now. If you deep dive into the rabbit hole, selling to poor people is probably one of the worst decisions that you can ever make. And actually, let me just do this. So I'm just gonna talk to ChatGPT, my therapist, which is some of the best advice that I can give to a poor person is don't sell to poor people because they don't have money. You need to sell to rich people because they have lots of money. Why are people so uh against this, right? I know it's very basic. I know it's very basic, but poor people don't have money. And, if you kind of think of it like this, if you're going to, let's say, rob a neighborhood, do you think you're going to get more stuff from robbing the poor neighborhood where you live if you're poor, or the rich neighborhood that has a lot more stuff, right? It's the same thing with money, right? You want to sell to the rich neighborhoods because the rich neighborhood has money. And if your goal is to make that money, you got to sell to rich people. Make sense? Right? So let's go ahead and see what ChatGPT says.
People push back against this idea for a few reasons. 1. Emotional reaction. It sounds dismissive or exploitative, even if it's just a strategic business move. Many people take offense because they associate it with abandoning those who need help the most. 2. Misunderstanding of business strategy. A lot of people are uncomfortable with the reality that wealthier clients generally make for better, more consistent business. They might believe that businesses should cater to everyone equally, even when that's not practical. 3. Survivorship bias and personal experience. Many people come from environments where businesses do cater to lower-income customers, e.g. dollar stores, fast food chains. They assume that means selling to poor people is a viable long-term strategy for everyone, even when margins are razor-thin. 4. Guilt or morality. Some people believe it's wrong to prioritize selling to the rich because they think businesses should focus on helping struggling people. They don't realize that by targeting wealthier clients, you actually build a stronger financial foundation, one that could later allow you to give back or create more opportunities for those with less. At the end of the day, selling to people who have money is common sense in business, but it makes people uncomfortable because it contradicts what they've been taught about fairness, morality, and economic mobility.
So, my philosophy when it comes to serving poor people is you have to serve poor people after you become rich, right? So you sell to the rich people first, and then you serve the poor people if that's what you want to do. But what I'm saying is that if you do the other, try to sell to people who don't have money, and your livelihood depends on that, you are going to struggle. You're going to struggle, and even ChatGPT says this, right? ChatGPT says like, "Hey, they don't realize by targeting wealthier clients, you actually build a stronger financial foundation, one that could later allow you to give back or create more opportunities for those with less." Right? And again, I know it's with basic English words definitions, this is common sense, but I'm going to tell you why. I'll tell you why not to sell to poor people. So I don't know if you ever heard like the $50 or is it like the $500 versus the $50,000 client meme? But the second reason that you shouldn't sell to poor people is kind of thoroughly explained to this meme, right? In this meme, right? So when you deal with, let's say, a $500 client, you'll receive a lot of people who act like it's like the everything that you do needs to be scrutinized, and if you don't do it to what I call insanely unrealistic expectations and standards, you'll get messages like, "I feel as though with this investment I'm about to make in you that we should understand how our lives are about to change, and I need results, and you need to bring them to me, and I'm trusting you with their livelihood and lives." Whereas the $50,000 client is essentially just money sent, thanks, right? And so, which client do you think gives you less stress? Now, I'm not saying every $50,000 client is like this, but the probable likelihood of you meeting this type of $50,000 client um, is a lot higher when you deal with the rich people than when you deal with the people who are not so rich, right? And I say this if you're poor that because I care about you and I don't want you to struggle. So if you're poor and you're trying to sell to poor people, you're just going to receive a lot of unnecessary stress than rather than trying to serve rich people. And the idea that rich people don't need your goods and services is a very mistaken one. And I say this as someone who's rich or at least plays one on the internet, right? I want people to cater to me, and I almost feel like I'm ignored by a lot of society because people have a misunderstanding, okay, that it's wrong to serve rich people, right? That for some reason that's yeah, some people believe it's wrong to prioritize selling to the rich because they think businesses should help on focusing I mean, should focus on helping struggling people, which is kind of weird, right? How do you make a profit off of people or make money off of people who don't have it? Make sense? Right? Now here's I'm just going to expand upon this idea about the $500 client. And there's a reason why on my Google form link I pretty much emphasize the $20,000 and don't submit the form unless you're serious is because I had some bad experiences with people who admitted to me that they were broke and then they're acting like this dude right here. And again, I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm just saying like, hey, people who I've dealt with who have a ton of money really never acted like this to me. Almost never. Like, okay. In fact, I remember once upon a time, and I talked about this in another video. I met an older Korean dude with 5 commercial properties, and the first time I ever met him, okay, he didn't know anything about me. He didn't say, he didn't say like, how much real estate investing experience do you have? All he did, we sat down to Panera Bread. We just introduced each other. I told him I don't have that much experience in real estate investing compared to you. He pulled out a cell phone and showed me $2 million in his checking account, and he said, "Hey, if you want to borrow this money, I'll lend it to you." Literally did that. And I was like, "What?" Whereas someone who admitted to me on a Zoom call, because I used to like encourage people to go ahead and click the Google form link below, because I honestly thought most people like were gonna ask me questions like, "What can I learn from this educational program?" And the things that I'm selling, and I'm currently selling right now. Instead, what was happening is that they were like saying stupid shit like, and pardon me for cussing, like, "Well, tell me what makes you better than your competition." Right? I'm like, "What?" I'm actually trying to sell educational like back then it used to be lifetime for a $2,000 package, educational programs that were, I thought would give a good foundation to even people who didn't have money. and they were just like trying to act like they were the boss and grilling me. And again, person admits to me that they don't have money on a Zoom call, and then they're trying to grill me like I need their business. And then the guy who has millions of dollars in a checking account was like, "Yeah, I'll just lend it to you." And he didn't even ask me about my experience, right? See the two different worlds that you got to deal with. That's why I say don't, if you're poor and you want to become rich, don't deal with poor people. And if you want to help poor people, do it after you get the money from the rich people, right? So just going to end with this, right? The reason I say this is because I remember one time I had a Zoom call with a prospect who admitted that they were struggling with money. So when I tried to sell them an educational package for about $2,000 and it was lifetime education, they were in, you know, instead of asking questions about what they were learning, what they could learn, okay, what they could learn, they were asking what makes me better than my competition, right? What makes me better than my competition? To me, that made no sense. And as a rich person, when I uh, okay, so as a rich person, when I get on a phone call with any professional, I've already determined that I'm going to buy their product even before the phone call. Let's go ahead and see what ChatGPT says here.
This is a perfect example of the difference in mindset between wealthy and struggling individuals when it comes to purchasing. People who are struggling with money often have a scarcity mindset, which makes them hyper-focused on not losing rather than gaining value. That's why instead of asking, "How can this help me grow and make more money?" they ask, "Why should I trust you over someone else?" Because they are mentally in defense mode. Wealthier individuals tend to have an investment mindset. If they take a call, they've already vetted the idea and are looking for confirmation, not permission. They assume they'll get value and focus on how quickly they can apply it, rather than on protecting their money at all costs. You experienced firsthand why selling to struggling people is an uphill battle. Instead of seeing the $2,000 as a leverage tool to help them break free financially, they saw it as a risk that they needed to justify endlessly. This is also why people with money don't waste time arguing over small costs. They focus on ROI. And ironically, that's often how they got rich in the first place.
Right. And so as you can see here, even when I examine my own behaviors, right, and my own experiences, I realize how true it is that how much easier it is to deal with people who have money than people who don't, right? Like I remember when I first heard that was like, "Well, tell me what makes you better than your competition." I was like shocked because I was hoping that people who were struggling would rather just focus on what they could learn. And that mindset wasn't there, and which is why I just changed the Google form to be a little bit more friendly and so that most of you don't talk to me if you're going to do that to me. Right? So, all right. Well, that's it for today. So, here's the thing. If you're looking to make money, you need to get it from people who have it, aka the rich people. If your goal is to help poor people, make the money from the rich people first and then try to sell to poor people, right? I know this is counterintuitive, but our society is quite I don't even can't even think of another word. Maybe I don't want to say it. It starts with an R, but I'll say with an S. It's quite stupid because the type of mentality we have is like, hey, if I want to steal someone's food, am I going to go to the food desert or the farm? Right? I am going to go to the farm. Same thing when it comes to making money. Hey, if my goal is to legally and ethically I'm sorry, make money, I got to make it from the people who have it. And the literal definition of a rich person is someone who has money. So even if you're poor right now, this is actually the best advice for you. Again, I don't really give financial or personal advice. And let me actually nix that. I don't give any advice, right? This is advice to myself when I was poor. Okay. The best advice I would give to myself when I was poor is don't deal with poor people and just only deal with rich people, right? The dumbest and stupidest doctor will have a lot more money to spend than for your product than the hardest working supermarket worker. And I know that sounds really harsh, but hey, if you're that hardest working supermarket worker and you want to make money, then you got to find a rich doctor to sell to, right? Make sense? I know. It's obvious, but people are really, really against it. Okay. And so actually, let me end with this. So, does the average person who is against selling to rich people not understand that for a poor person selling to an other poor poor people is a giant uphill battle?
Exactly. The average person who opposes this idea doesn't seem to grasp how difficult it is for a poor person to sell to other poor people. If you're struggling financially and your target audience is also struggling, you're dealing with 1. Low buying power. They simply don't have the money to spend, so you're constantly trying to convince them. 2. Price resistance. Even if they want the product, they hesitate, negotiate, or look for the cheapest alternative. 3. Scarcity mindset. Instead of seeing how your offer can improve their situation, they focus on why they can't afford it. 4. High emotional resistance. They view spending as a loss rather than an investment, which makes closing sales a battle. 5. Limited word-of-mouth growth. If most of your customers are broke, they can't refer you to high-paying clients. It's a fundamentally flawed strategy to sell to people who can't afford what you're offering. Yet, a lot of people push back on this idea because they view money emotionally, not logically. They think selling to rich people is unfair, instead of realizing selling to rich people makes business easier and more profitable. If anything, selling to people with money is the best way for a struggling person to escape poverty. The sooner they realize that, the faster they can start winning.
Do you see this part? Like ChatGPT knows this, right? But the average human refuses to acknowledge that. The best way for a struggling person to escape poverty, and this is why I said this video is actually for poor people, is to sell to people with money. Sell to rich people. Okay. All right. Well, that's it for today, folks. This is Karina Atlanta Mentorship. Have a great day, and I'll see you on the next video.